I would like to say that next year, during the Day of Children and Adolescents, I will canonize the Blessed Carlo Acutis, and on the Day of Young People, next year, I will canonize the Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati.
A long-awaited announcement came during the Pope's general audience last November. Two young Catholics beloved around the world for their holiness and passion for the faith will be canonized. Jubilee years often feature canonization masses, a reminder that all people are called to holiness and to be an authentic witness of Christ. This year's two new saints are no different, and their inspiring stories are already well known across the globe. Blessed Carlo Acutis is the first millennial to be canonized in the church and possibly the first saint to be buried in a tracksuit and sneakers. Born in 1991, Acutis loved the Eucharist and used his computer coding skills to document Eucharistic miracles. He died from leukemia at the age of 15 in 2006. He will be canonized on April 27th during the Jubilee of Teenagers. Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, a young man known for his love of mountaineering and charitable outreach to the poor, was born in 1901 to a wealthy family in northern Italy. Frassati died of polio in 1925 at the age of 24. His doctors believed he caught the disease while serving the sick. He will be canonized during the Jubilee of Young People on August 3rd. From urban California to rural West Virginia, these young saints have inspired dozens of ministries. Roselle Reyes introduces us to two ministries that, like their namesakes, help young people encounter Christ.
Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati.
What he means to me is kind of like an example of having fun, but also loving God.
And Blessed Carlo Acutis.
He is such an inspiration to the younger generation. I mean, he played Pokemon and everything. You know, he lived a life that's very similar to ours.
The two young soon-to-be saints have become popular patrons for teens and young adults. So it was no surprise that young Catholics around the world are rejoicing after Pope Francis announced that he will elevate Frassati and Acutis to sainthood in 2025. Though they were born 90 years apart and with differing interests, they had one thing in common. Frassati and Acutis lived a life full of faith and devotion to our Lord. In the west coast of the United States, in sunny California, a fellowship pays tribute to Frassati. The Frassati Hiking Club at John Paul the Great Catholic University meets every month to encounter God in the great outdoors, from beaches to mountains.
What we were going through with the hiking club and how we were hiking and praying and things like that, it was all kind of what Pier Giorgio Frassati did. You know, he was kind of like a model.
Timothy Flood, one of the leaders of the Frassati Hiking Club, says he aspires to be just like Frassati, who was an avid mountaineer and dedicated his life to helping the poor. On a photograph of what would be his last climb, Frassati wrote the phrase "verso l'alto," which means to the heights. This phrase has become a motto for Catholics like Timothy.
I think one word to explain Pier Giorgio would be mountaineer, you know, and the two versions of that would be like climbing mountains, but also, you know, climbing to the heights, you know, climbing to God through his daily life.
Timothy said being in the Frassati Club has grounded his faith.
I think that's how it's brought me closer to God, to be able to take a step back and to see my life as a whole with, you know, silence and the beauty of nature, Mass and fellowship.
Hundreds of miles to the east, in the lush mountains of West Virginia, a summer camp is named after Blessed Carlo Acutis. For kids and teens, they call this place Camp Carlo.
Camp Carlo is part of our diocesan summer camp program. So our diocese has operated summer camp for 60 years, started in 1965, in the mountains of West Virginia, in a beautiful place called Huttonsville.
Nick Chansey, Director of Youth and Young Adult Discipleship for the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, said in 2020, due to COVID, the camp was closed for the summer. This gave them time to rethink their name, which used to be Camp Tigert and Camp Bosco. They chose to name their camp after Carlo Acutis, who loved video games, soccer, and music, and had a deep desire to foster awareness of the Blessed Sacrament. This tech-savvy, soon-to-be the first millennial saint, created a website detailing Eucharistic miracles throughout the world.
I think it came down to the fact that when we're looking at incredible inspirational figures for our young people, he is truly one of the best.
Along with archery, ziplining, horseback riding, and canoeing, Chansey says kids and teens also participate in Mass, Eucharistic processions, and adoration. They hope campers find love in the Eucharist, just like their namesake. 14-year-old Ashby Mattern, who has been going to Camp Carlo for the past 3 years now, enjoys prayer time.
We pray almost all the time, and I love that. Whenever we do the faith formation, we don't just always go in one area. We're just everywhere.
Previous camper turned camp counselor Joshua Christ says Camp Carlo has changed his life.
I know for myself, adoration has been a really big part to play in my spiritual journey, where I have to, quiet my mind.
Joshua says his biggest takeaway from camp is that he is never alone. Jesus is always there if he needs him. That is why Joshua has a special devotion to Blessed Carlo Acutis.
To me, he is a saint that I can point to and say, it isn't impossible for sainthood. It's easy to look at the saints and be like, wow, they are just so mystical, so amazing, that it just seems so unattainable sometimes. But what did he look to? He looked to God. He looked to the Eucharist. And that's something that we can all do.
Roselle Reyes, EWTN News in Depth.